Everyone, thank you for taking the time and lending your ears to these various conversations. Very excited to share all the guests that I have with you this season, and in order for this season to be a success, I need you guys to help share the word and spread the love of the What Makes You Tick pod. While you're listening, please take a moment to like or subscribe to the podcast wherever you are. And as always, I really appreciate all the help and the support that you guys have given me.
I spoke about earlier, and one of the biggest learnings I had was around, support structures, having good people in our lives. Like, one of the biggest learnings I had from PD was, at the time I had loads of best friends, but when it really comes down to the crunch, you have a handful of really good friends who'll always be there for you and you're there for them. But you have a lot of friends, especially growing up, where they'll drain a lot of negative energy and they'll always be asking for your advice, but they never really give back. And it's a one-way traffic, it's a one-way system. And that's not true. That's not a friend. And I've learned to be able to identify good people in my life and those who I can gently disconnect from.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What Makes You Tick. And I'm delighted to say that I have my guest today is Joy Neville, who is international referee extraordinaire, joining us today. And like me, Joy hails from Limerick, but unlike me, Joy has 70 caps, I think it is, for Ireland. You're an international referee. You've won World Referee of the Year. And now you're about to represent Ireland once again in probably the greatest rugby competition and the most anticipated one for the Irish rugby team, the Rugby World Cup. So accolades are fantastic and they're great achievements to kind of nearly tick off the box. But where does your mind go, Joy, when you think about representing Ireland once again, and this time on the greatest stage? And welcome to the podcast.
Well, that was some introduction, just to state off the bat. And apologies for my attire. I'm just off the back of training. So that's a load of questions, Steve. And I don't think I look at it from the outside, from representing Ireland. I think sometimes if you look at it like that, it can become quite overwhelming. There's a lot of attention that, as the first. Throughout my career, I've been, on a few occasions, I've been the first to do something. And I've always tried to get across the point that I'm there on merit, and I'm not just there because of a tag or label. And one story that would probably articulate that the best, if I may share.
Work away.
Would be, and I think probably it's throughout my career, it's evolved what I've tried to get across, and I feel it's important to. But I remember rocking up to a clubhouse. It was one of my first DIL games, and a lot of the teams wouldn't have come across a female referee. One other would have been Helen O'Reilly, and arrived in the IRFU, the referee tracksuit, and I was met by all the lads outside chatting, and the grounds person, they all stopped. And as I walked up, and it became a little bit awkward, and they just all stopped and stared. There was silence, and I eventually said, "Can someone, the groundsman said, can you show me where the refs room is, please?" And he paused and looked me up and down. Eventually, he said, "A woman." And I think, as you well know, in life, there's a lot of curveballs, and the more you get to know yourself, the more you mature, the more life experience you have, you come up with ways in dealing with different situations, like tools to deal with life. And I realized that humor did me proud, from dealing with a difficult situation where someone may or do something that you don't like. So in this case, I use humor, and as he said, "Oh, a woman," and still looking at me up and down. And I said, "Well, the last time I checked, anyway, yeah." And all the lads burst out laughing. And instead of becoming confrontational, the humor completely brought things right down. But I still got my point across. He was mortified, right as a strawberry, and ushers me straight to the changing room. And literally, and this is no word of a lie, got changed. 10 minutes later, went out, met by a club person in their blazer, and an older gentleman. And he said, "Oh, you're here to ref the thirds." And that happened quite a lot but at the start, thankfully not anymore, because I think what's happened is there's been a cultural shift. It's because people haven't seen many females in the middle in this environment, and I put it down to education. I don't put it down to you know, being malicious or being mean. I just think it's lack of education. And I said, as he said, oh, you'll be able to keep up with the pace of play. And I said, well, I'm sure, instead of getting confrontation, I said, I'm sure I managed. And I kind of left it there and ran out. And I used that as a motivation to go out there and work as bloody hard as possible to prove that, we need to drop the tags and labels. We need to drop the genders, the sexualities, the size, cultures, the religions, and to get across the message that it's just about an individual in that environment doing the job to the best of their ability, regardless of any of that, at a standard necessary. And 9 times out of 10, those people came back up to me, wow, when's your next game? And I'd like to think that the next time someone from a minority group that come through those gates of that clubhouse, that they won't be met with the same experiences than I have. And I suppose the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because I've always wanted to be treated the same, like the goods and the bads. You can't always have the goods and not get the bads. And thankfully, like, I'm sat here now being selected to go to the Men's World Cup as a TMO because out of merit, because of, and it hasn't always been performances, don't get me wrong. I don't think that's even possible. Like, we'll all make mistakes, we'll all make wrong moves. But I've always said I don't want my gender to come into it, or else I don't want to go at all. Like, I don't want to be there just because I'm a token, or because of what it represents. I want to be there because I'm good enough to be there, and because I've got there through hard work. So when to your question, a very long-winded answer, I don't really think about everything else and what I'm representing, because I need to focus on the job at hand and the performance. Because if you allow all that come in, it can become overwhelming.
So I love that you went down that route, because I was very conscious about, when I asked the question, that I never mentioned the word female, right? So that was really, really important to me, because as I have kind of my few cues here, but it led me on to my next question. Was absolutely, you're there on merit, without a doubt, right? And I think it's the same in business. When you see women in business or women leaders, they're leaders. End of story. You don't need a title, as in a tag beforehand, because that automatically creates this misconception or preconception about why they're there or what they're doing, and how people are responding to them. So that was really, really important for me, is to make sure that you're an international referee, you're a world referee of the year. You represented Ireland, you are in the greatest rugby competition that's out there. But I think, just to take it back a little bit then, because some listeners don't know you like I know you, they haven't seen you grow and develop and become the person that you are. Like, I've known you since you were a little one, right? So we've known each other for years and years and years, the good, the bads, and the uglies, right? And
all uglies.
All uglies, yeah. but to it's great that you're saying that you're doing it on merit and you're focusing on the path to be the best that you can be. But how did you find your way into the world of refereeing? Because typically, well, traditionally, you wouldn't have seen a lot of players go into the world of refereeing, but now you're seeing a lot more. Like, I remember John Lacey going across, becoming a referee, who was one of Munster's all-time greatest scorers, right? And John actually coached me a little bit. You see Frank Murphy reffing. There's
Andy.
And yeah, so there's loads out there, right? But what was your path? Like, what was the catalyst for you to start to become a referee?
I just, firstly, I loved what you touched on the female thing, and can I just get 2 things across before we move on to that?
Go for it, yeah.
Because I think it's really important. So my first Pro 14 game was in Ulster versus Southern Kings, and there was a lot of media attention. It was broadcast on a few different channels, and all the talk was of the first female, and went to the game and refereed. I wouldn't say perfectly, because no referee does, and that's another gripe I have, because as a player, you're expected to make mistakes. They have your back. Post-match analysis, it's okay. You grow, you move on. But as a referee, there's this unrealistic view that we're going to get everything right, and that's why it's where we get such criticism, because we're set at an unrealistic standard. But off the back of that game, I refereed well. And what I loved about it was all the media attention was around the referee and not the female referee anymore, because the performance came thereafter. And a lot of the time I talk to the lads, and I openly I have very good like relationships with like really good friends and support. And the reason why I'm probably here, one of the biggest reasons why I'm here is the, we talk about relationships and the importance of good people in our lives. So we have family and friends, but my group, the referees, like the George Clancy's, the Johnny Lacey's, Andy Brace's, Frank Murphy's, David Wilkinson's, Sean, like, John Gatter, I could keep naming people because they've always been there to support me, bounce things off, and I'd be there for them. And I have a lot to be thankful for that. But we'd always have open and transparent conversations, and I'd always be interested. Do you think I get an easier time because I'm female? And the majority of them initially they go, yeah, I do. And I hope you don't mind me saying, I was like, I want you to be honest here, is it? Because I was ready to debate back. And I said, why? And they said, well, they gave a couple of reasons, and valid reasons. I could understand them. I said, but lads, what happens when the game is a tight scoring game, 2 points, 78 minutes to 60 minutes to go, and both really competitive teams in the men's professional game? Do you still think that they consider that I'm a female rather than anything else? And do you think then the second or third time I referee them, do you still think they consider me as a female? Or do you think that if the accuracy is out the window from the very beginning, I lose credibility? Do you think they'll still stay patient? And they were like, yeah, okay, valid point. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up with the female thing. And I think it's something that we're still kind of battling. And part of the reason why I'll always look for performance and I'll do extra preparation is because I do know there's still a minority group that will bring it back, that tying a label and go, oh, but she's a woman. And that kills me. I hate that. I really do. So that's why it kind of motivates me to try to give those performances in order to smother that minority group. That aside, sorry, back to your question. I was approached after I hung up my boots. I played 11 years with Ireland, 70 caps, as you alluded to. And I was ready to give back. I met my now wife, and your priorities change, Steve. I think, in your background, we grew up together. I know you really well, and you were a brilliant rugby player. And, for reasons, you had to, give up the game. Your body probably gave in when you probably wanted to stay on, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like, I was very lucky I got to choose, even though my teammates killed me and they wanted me to stay on for another World Cup year. And the love of the training wasn't there anymore. And if the love for the training isn't there, I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't withhold someone, like, take a spot from someone who's up and coming and deserves to be there for many reasons. And I was ready to spend time with my family and friends. So I announced my retirement, and 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Dave McHugh. And he's like, would you be interested in refereeing? And I never met Dave. He'd refereed female men's World Cups. And I said, geez, Dave, all due respect, I've never met you before, but you've come to me with something that would demand an awful lot more commitment than what I've already given to the game. And I have no regrets to that. Great memories, but I've decided to hang up my boots because I need to spend time with my family and friends. And I want to give back to my family who've always been there for me, but I've missed so many of their big moments. Birthdays, weddings, christenings, truly like. And he said, I just think there's something there. Give it a few months, enjoy your time off. I think you get bored, but I think there's something there, and I'll give you a call in 7 or 8 months. And I said, perfect. And I thought that was that. And 7 or 8 months later, he picks up the phone and said, geez, this man really means business. And I said, right, give me a few days, because like you, Steve, if you're going to put your mind to something, you're going to give it 100%. And I thought it was worth considering, will I give it 100%? Will I truly, commit fully, and what it involves and what I knew hadn't been achieved in Ireland and what I wanted to achieve. So I picked up the phone to a guy really high up in the rugby circles, a guy you actually know, and I've never mentioned his name, and I won't mention his name, and a friend and a guy I respected, his opinion. And after we were chatting, I said, come here, listen, I got a call from Dave McHugh, and he asked me would I be interested in refereeing. I just need to know one thing before I decide whether to commit or not. And that is because up to this point, no female had ever refereed in St Mary's, Garryones, in the All-Ireland League division 1, 2 and 3. And I said, do you think it's just answer me this? Do you think it's possible for a female to referee in the top division in Ireland? And immediately he said, Joy, not in my lifetime. And this guy was in his mid-50s. I said, wow, right, you know, like that's pretty comprehensive. And he didn't take a breath to come back with that answer. And we finished the conversation. And I respect his opinion. And I thought, you know, that's what I wanted. I wanted his truth. And I put down the phone. I picked it up to Dave McHugh and I said, I'm in. And the reason being is because now I had something I wanted to achieve. That was my goal now. That's what I wanted to achieve. Did I think I'd referee Division All Ireland Division 1? Probably not. I definitely didn't think I'd referee in the men's professional game. I definitely didn't think I'd get contracted by the RFU, you know, and everything else thereafter. You know, I think it's a step-by-step thing. And as you build confidence, then you think, oh, maybe I can do this. And it evolves. The idea and the goals evolve. And that's probably one of my proudest moments, because in our lifetime, like, and I'm sure this has happened to you, I've no doubt this has happened to you, that someone has said to you, when you can't or you won't be able to do something, and that can come from the worst place in their heart, a place of a head of experience on the shoulders where they think they know best, or a good place in their heart, but they just don't believe that you can do it. But in the end of the day, we create the narrative. Like, we're the ones who can decide, or you know, decide whether you be one of two people: the person who takes that opinion face value and leaves that idea there, or the person who has self-belief, puts a bloody good plan in place. And I'll always say, with a bit of luck, because the luck does take part in it, that you can achieve whatever you put your mind to. And looking back, I've achieved so much, but that's something I'll never forget, because I'm proud of myself that you know, that I was strong-minded to pursue that. And a year and a half later, I ref the first Division 1 game. It was Corkán versus Clontarf in Corkán, and it was just a proud moment.
It's interesting, isn't it, with the spark of disbelief or lack of belief, it kind of creates a catalyst in you to go, I'll show you. So when you finish playing rugby, I found it when I stopped playing that I lacked a purpose, right? I lacked a reason to train. I lacked a reason to stay fit. I lacked kind of, I didn't know what my purpose was, right? And it sounds that from that conversation, all of a sudden you found your purpose. You found a kind of like my purpose was, I'm going to prove you wrong, and off the back of that, let's see what happens. And not only did you prove that person wrong, and brilliantly so, you've gone on and you have, I suppose, you've become an inspiration for both guys and girls, for boys and girls, for men and women around the world, to kind of know that there's not, you said you control essentially, the control was you control what's in your line of sight and how you act and how you react. Like with humor in the early days, like with defiance in the early days, you've controlled how you react, and there's a lot to learn from that. Is that something that you would have always had? So when somebody says you can't, that you say I can? Is that something that has always been there, or is that something only in the kind of the latter couple of years?
I think you could answer that one. Absolutely. I think, yeah, for sure. But that hasn't come easy either. Like, you know, I knew how to react in those moments I told you about, using humor in difficult situations. And they're the tools. Like, I find, like, in this environment, it's such cutthroat. It's so cutthroat. Like, it's a difficult environment, and it's the analysis after the game, the criticism, social media, the media attention, especially at the highest level and international level. It's not easy. Like, but I've learned so much from this environment that I've transferred into my own personal life. Like, in that case, I knew how to deal with that groundsman outside that clubhouse because of difficult learnings. I'll never forget, I was in Donnybrook. I was reffing 20s interpros, and I went into the change room again. The lads never had a female refereeing them before, and I went into the changing room of one of the provinces, met with the front row chatting, and they couldn't stop giggling and laughing, and they thought that it was the situation was hilarious that I was a female stood in front of them, and I did nothing, Steve. And I think sometimes we need to be kinder to ourselves because we just don't know how to react when it's the first time something happens. I didn't know what to do. I'm glad I didn't do the wrong thing. I'm glad I didn't get aggressive, snappy, confrontational, because once you go to that level, you lose all messagings. Like, you come away the complete loser. And you feel more annoyed about what you've done instead of what's happened to you. And
Yeah.
that's when you really don't feel comfortable and right.
Yeah.
Instead, I walked away and I did nothing. And I went out and I warmed up soon after. And I was kicking myself. I said, why didn't you do anything? And I said, right, you warm up when you do this game. And I knew I'd have to really work hard the first 10 minutes to buy back that credibility, because in their minds, like, she's no respect for herself. If she allowed us laughing in front of her, like,
Yeah.
we can walk over on the pitch. So I went and refereed her the first 10, and I had them back in my pocket thereafter. And that's not being cocky. I made sure of it. I had to make sure of it.
Yeah.
Um, and and I went away after and I said, you're going to have to think long and hard if this happens again, because it will happen again. And I think that's what's happened. It's a mindset, and that's something I've really taken on board throughout every difficult moment. If I haven't reacted in the way I've wanted to, or I could have done better, I think and reflect. Where could I have done different? How could I have done better? What could I have changed? And about 3 months to the day, the same thing happened. And I said, right, I have you now, you little so and so. And I was reffing the BNI Cup in England. It was Ospreys versus, I forget who else. And so British and Irish Cup is one level below Pro 14 at the time,
Hmm.
now URC.
Yeah.
And so these are lads who've just got injured, like, and looking to get back on the first team, or academy lads who are breaking into the first team. And one adult man, and he thought it was hilarious. It was on International Women's Day, and he started laughing, and I said, right, I know exactly how to deal with this, because I've reflected and I've prepared for this moment. Um, and do you know when you're in school and you use the silent treatment, and I used to hate it, and the teacher, and I said, this is what I was going to do, this is what I was prepared to do, and I stopped mid-sentence as he's like big, like wide smile on his face, and all the lads kind of looking around for a reaction, what to do. And I stopped, and there was silence. And he's still a big bubbly smile on his face into a giggle. And the silence became more prominent, became more awkward, more silence. His smile became a stern face. His pale, stern face became a pink face to a red face. Still stayed silent, and I simply smirked, and I said, right, we could continue so. And all the lads burst out laughing around him, and he goes, fair enough. And I said, perfect.
Yeah.
And when we moved on, did the game, had no issues. And we talk about being equipped with dealing with situations, but if we don't have the ability to reflect on difficult situations in life, which mostly are thrown at us, well, we won't learn in how to use the tools in order to come away feeling satisfied with our responses, or knowing that you haven't let yourself down for not doing anything or doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's if where you look at that though is that I've heard you speak before. It's about like education, and it's not about, as you said earlier on, it's not about the maliciousness. It's just the fact that they've never been in that environment before, right? They're typically lads, and all of a sudden their typical actions don't work. They're not. It's not acceptable anymore. So everybody has to adjust, and I think it goes back to respect, right? So you were able to gain respect from players more so because of the work that you were doing on the pitch, not necessarily because of what you looked like or anything like that. It was essentially because the work you were doing on the pitch. You go back to high performance. If and you
Performance.
and you look at the conversations you've had with your colleagues, the honesty there, that initial moment of she's only there because ends when the final whistle goes and go, that was a great game. Do you
When
know,
you follow up a performance.
yeah, yeah. And
But can I just say one thing? I
yeah,
haven't always got it right. I'm not talking about performance. I'm talking about off the pitch.
of course.
I'm human. I've reacted. I've learned the majority of the time just to take a breath, take 10, type up the email, park it next day, send it, or mostly edit it.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I've snapped. I've lost it.
Well, I
I've
was going
been
to
that.
ask you that. I was going to ask you, like, because it's good that you have these examples as a professional referee, but what's it like behind the scenes? Like, are you as cool and collected behind the scenes when it's not about the job?
No, I've a temper and a half of me. I'm impulsive. I think, and extremely competitive. It's a Neville trait. All of them Neville traits.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, 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 yeah, but as I said, like I've improved, I've evolved, I've grown as a person, um, significantly, and I haven't always got it right. I've snapped, and then, but I still always go away and I reflect, and I'll always go to that person and go, oh, look, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't react like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, I have an awareness, and probably comes from, like, I did social studies and social care for 4 years in LIT, and one of the modules was personal development, and everyone hated doing it because it's just a hard thing to do.
It's hard to be honest
Um,
with yourself sometimes, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it is. I spoke about earlier, and one of the biggest learnings I had was around support structures, having good people in our lives. Like, one of the biggest learnings I had from PD was, you know, at the time I had loads of best friends, but when it really comes down to the crunch, you don't have, you have a handful of really good friends who'll always be there for you and you're there for them. But you have a lot of friends, especially growing up, where they'll drain a lot of negative energy and they'll always be asking for your advice, but they never really give back. And it's a one-way traffic, it's a one-way system. And that's not true. That's not a friend. Like, and I've learned to be able to identify good people in my life and those who I can gently disconnect from, because I'm not getting anything. And something I was going to say, that's, I'm not being selfish, but I am being selfish.
Yeah,
You
well,
have
like
to be selfish.
I think there's a point in time where you do find out when challenging times come along who your friends are, right? And we've all been through that. But I also think then, to your point, is if you're finding that you're chasing friendships, if you're trying to create and continue the connection and they're not reciprocating that, then ultimately it's like you either invest your time, because time is so precious. You invest your time in the people who want your time, because then you'll get more out of it and you'll feel far more recharged or far fuller, right? um and I think to your point, when it comes to family isn't necessarily just the blood. It's the people that you have in your support universe or your network around you, that they become family in a way whereby you might necessarily call your brothers every day, right? But you can call somebody else who will give you the advice that you need at that moment to kind of connect you and bring you back down to reality a little bit. Whereas brothers will protect you, right? They're like, you're the youngest of
Yeah,
four and or five, so it's like they're going to protect you, they're going to look after you. I'm sure they'll give you an old sticking as well, but like, what I'm trying to say there is the people who want your time, you won't you'll never question that, right? You'll never
no.
question that. And the people that you feel filled with energy, they'll always be there because there's a reciprocation going on.
Yeah, I'll give you a funny story here, and it's so true. Like, so when I got the call about being called up to the Men's World Cup as a TMO, we were told just to keep it in the hush for a week before it was, um, announced
Yeah.
officially. And my dad, as you well know, my dad passed away 3 months ago,
Yeah.
and the first person I wanted to ring, and it was a strange moment. It was a great moment, but it was an emotional moment, and it was a strange moment because I went immediately to pick up the phone to Dad, because anytime throughout my career, both as a player and a referee, Dad was always the go-to port to call. There was no point in Mum, because she didn't have a clue or nor understand exactly what it entailed. So, and she won't mind me saying that because she'd say it herself. So it was always Dad. So, and I was left there, and I kind of went to the kitchen. I kind of got emotional with someone. I said, I just wanted to talk to Dad, like, and she embraced me and she had my back. And straight away I thought Ronnie. And even though, like, I spend loads of time, like, with Dave and Paul, and like particularly Paul, since COVID, um, in Limerick, Ronnie's in Dublin, and it was Ronnie because Ronnie is, like, always rings me about law or games and where you think teams will go or how they get on, and it was always a three-way conversation between me, Dad, and Ronnie, and Ronnie's quite similar to Dad. So I picked up the phone to Ronnie, and we both shed a tear, like, and I said, I don't know if this makes sense, but you're the first person I've really told other than Simona, because it was the connection with Dad. He was like, totally understand it. Are you okay? Um, and afterwards, it was announced, and I did a podcast with Andy with Off the Ball, and I just mentioned it, and immediately Paul Neville was on to me. He was not happy. What about me? In a joking way. And to your point about family, Fiona Coughlin was on to me, and she was, oh yeah, Ronnie was the first port to call, and I'm on to Fiona every day. So, like, there's a lot of weight in what you said, but I love you, Paul, and I love you, Fiona.
Just so we get that out there. But since I was actually going to ask you about that as well, because with your dad passing, and I know that it has been obviously so tough and tricky. And obviously he has been and was super proud of you and all your achievements over the years. And even just being you, right? Forgetting about the achievements, he was super proud of you, I'm sure, as a person. But having him as a key figure throughout your life, what, if anything, has he passed on to you that you would pass on to Alfie?
I think it's probably determination. If you really want to go get it, put the hard graft in, and just um, there's nothing that you can achieve. But I think that comes from the boys as well as my mom has always been very supportive, like a very solid family, support. To be honest with you, I'm not just saying it but like I do have a lot to thank the lads for, and I actually we've a WhatsApp group, the boys and girl, it's called, because for others who don't know, like the boys they're all older than me, and I'm the youngest in the family, but and I used to plague them to play sports, like whether it was soccer. You were probably down the pier with us, Steve,
Yeah.
and they were much older, and they're like, this is the uncool sister, and the perception, and I used to plague them enough that they'd always let me in the end. But again, they never treated me any different. If I was to play, I had to put up and shut up with all the hard hits and tackles. I remember doing like 2v1s, WWE, and it was always Paul and Dave against me, and I'd end up getting battered and bruised, but I'd never complain to mum or dad, because then I wouldn't be invited back, and
Yeah.
that goes against everything I want. So I just never gave out. But they always saw me as equal. They never treated me that because I was a girl or female, that I couldn't do what they could do. And that's probably why I'm so comfortable in these environments, in a
Yeah.
male dominated environment. And I'm not always comfortable. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it hasn't always been easy, but I've always felt confident in that environment because of the upbringing that I've had between my dad and the boys.
Yeah. I think it is actually brilliant, because you don't look for any hand-me-downs, especially when it comes to the world of reffing and stuff. You're like, treat me the exact same, and because that's how the lads treated you. So there's the kind of a foundation in there. So when it comes back to determination and the message from your dad, the determination happens through action, right? Through putting yourself and encouraging yourself to go into tricky situations or uncomfortable situations and find a way through it. Whether that's WWE with the lads as a young one, or whether that's in a male-dominated environment, being the leading or the pioneer of the game for women. It's kind of like you wouldn't find that determination if you weren't thrown into those kind of deep ends,
Well, it's resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like my boy is 2 next month, and I'm DIY. I love DIY, and I feel a sense of reward when I can do something myself, make something, and he is by my side since he's been a year, and he's been pottering, and he's with the tools, and I'm showing him, and it's resilience. Like, and I've always said to Simone, and like all my family and her family, like, you're only 2, would you relax? Like, but like, I want to make sure I implement, good habits. It's all habit. Like, we're what is it? What's the saying? Something of habit. We're creatures of habit.
Creatures of habit.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and creating that habit and good routines, I think, has a massive knock-on effect in later life. And even like, he doesn't like, he's still in his cop. When he becomes a small little bed, I'm going every morning. There'll be a routine where he makes his bed up, even if it's not done to any standard whatsoever. But at least it's creating that routine, so that when he comes of age, that it becomes natural, and it'll
Yeah.
become,
Just becomes innate then, doesn't it?
yeah,
It's like
innate. Yeah.
that's my day. That's how I start my day. Let's talk a little bit more about family, if you don't mind. And we kind of touched on it a little bit, that the family can become the kind of foundation for our lives and how we take on life, especially from a young age. We kind of get, as you say, we instill these habits, and we get to learn these different ways. It can help us, shape us both positively, and equally it can help shape us negatively, right? depending on the environment that you've been brought up in. So can you maybe just dive into a little bit more about what it was like growing up in Limerick and what it was like what memories stand out for you that you bring with you to this day?
Um, always been at the front, always kicking the ball around. Always idolizing the boys, wanting to be around them. Um, thought they were the coolest things ever. A very happy home most of the time. Our dad was quite strict, but a great father. Mum is the biggest heart that you'll come across in a mother, and would do anything for you. Like I've been very lucky to be brought up in a strong family household. Going to Le Pickle, like not my dad wasn't a very sociable man. And like some would say he's socially inept. He never drank. When he's on, he was he's the entertainment in the room. Um, but he wouldn't particularly like going out and about
Mm.
dinners and stuff. But so it was like big occasions, communions, confirmations, birthdays. And the ironic thing is we'd always go to Le Pickle. And Le Pickle was obviously the restaurant of my wife's family.
Yeah.
And my dad and Simona's dad actually knew each other. My parents were at her parents' wedding in the Holy Rosary nearly 51 years ago. Would you believe that?
Limerick is so tiny, isn't it?
And then my mum and dad eloped 2 weeks after they got married in the Holy Rosary. They eloped in Rome.
And that wasn't a done thing back then. Like,
No, of course not. And my dad used Simona's dad as an interpreter in Rome for a couple of weeks. My dad used to buy and sell greyhounds. He was very well known in those environments. And he went out. They built a new racetrack in Rome, and they wanted him to go out and give his opinion and what dogs to buy for the races and stuff like that. And so Alfredo um, went over with Dad for 2 weeks, would you believe, and was Dad's interpreter for that time over there. So,
sure.
and it's funny now that I've ended up, marrying his daughter.
It's
Simone.
insane, isn't it? Like it's so funny how it happens, and it was destined. That's the way. It's the only way you could look at it. Like it was
Can
destined to
only
happen.
be, only be.
um, let's just go back a little bit to the rugby and to the World Cup ahead. You and I have been kind of texting back and forth as we were kind of organizing this chat, right? And one of the things that stood out to me when we were having the kind of little conversations here and there was that the work starts now, right? That was a phrase that you used, and I've seen like you've kind of nodded to it a little bit in our chat here, and I've heard you kind of say it in other environments. But like, can you explain what you mean by that? Because considering all the work that you've done to get to this stage, right, and to get to this level, where does your mind go when you start saying the work starts now? Is that the competitor in you, or what?
I think that's the survivor, and that's the protection that I have. Um, like after having Alfie, I thought, would I be able to get back into this environment? Would I be able to go back into the male professional game? Would I be fast enough? Would I be fit enough? Would I be mentally strong enough? Would I get back that fitness, which I did with a lot of help from Andy and Owen Cross and Andy Brace and Lorna Barry, like lots of different S&Cs, Craig. Um, but they were all like questions. We talk about confidence, and
Mm.
my confidence had a knock because that inner dialogue, negative dialogue, kicks in. And will I be able? And I remember sitting down with Johnny. Will I go for another job, or will I try to get back? Will I be recontracted? Will I be able for it? Will I get back to where I was? And again, Johnny Lacey, he was excellent. He was like, yeah, of course, why not? Like, and I even spoke to him the other day, and it was, I'm here because of you. Thank you. Like, and I think it's important to have those conversations with people who have positive impacts in your life. Um, and Johnny's there as coach now, like, and he's got four people, and Dudley Phillips from there, a few, got four people there considered compared to 2019. Only Andy went as an AOR, so like that program that's been put in place has been massively successful from a referee department and our review perspective. But I went into the Women's World Cup, and I knew that I'd be up against strong competition. I wanted to get there, and I wanted to referee a second World Cup final, but I knew that it would take a lot to get there.
Mm.
Holly Davison was there refereeing really well. They don't often give the final to the same referee twice. Not that that was a reason, but I knew that I needed to really referee strong. And like that, I realised the work started. Now I got selected for the World Cup. Now I needed to put a plan in place, be fit enough, fast enough to get to the breakdown, in time to identify the first offence, not the second. Therefore, accuracy's out the window. To be mentally strong enough to be away from home, from Alfie and from Simona for 2 months, not seeing them. And most importantly, and to your question, to come home knowing that I have no regrets.
Mm.
It's one thing getting selected for something, but there's another thing taking it for granted. I'm going there and not performing. That's my worst nightmare. So when I said to you, the hard work starts now, and that's exactly what I said to you. That means I have 4 months, 3.5 months to now implement a deeper platform and plan in place to really, execute my comms. So, and build my communication, build the portfolio of instances that have happened up to this point. But look at, like, I've AMS as a platform that we use, that we can get any game, and you can click on TMO and any, like, no try reviews or foul play reviews. So you need to go through all that in order to review any instances that have happened that probably would happen 1 in 1,000 games. So that at least if it happens while I'm over in the World Cup, I've seen it and I've processed it in my head and understood how I'm going to react. Would I come in there? Won't I come in there? Like, prepare myself in order to minimize the unknowns or the surprises, so that I can come away off the back of the Men's World Cup and to again ensure that minority group will, off the back of a bad performance or not a good performance, can bring it back to the label of my gender. Like, if that happens, I'd be terribly disappointed, because up to this point, it's been a good story. It's been the first female, hopefully open up doors for others, but then hopefully drop that tag and let's move on now.
Yeah.
But if I don't perform, well, then that only provides ammunition for all that negative dialogue towards tags and labels to come back. And I feel I have a bigger responsibility, not just to myself and my family, but to creating that culture so that to protect for others to come through. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I suppose there's just a kind of a bit of a let me challenge you a little bit on that, okay? Because when you talk about like preparing, the work starts now, and doing everything you can so that when you look back at it, that you gave it your best and that you haven't kind of let yourself down in that regard, right? There's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people who will not buy into the narrative, right? And unfortunately, that is just the world, right? That's just unfortunate. There's people like that out there, which we cannot have an impact in, because they have their blinkers on. They're not willing to listen, right? But so to that point, that's out of your control, right? So it's going back to, what's yours? What can you put in place? And you probably have an answer to all this, but it's what you can put in place so that when you look in the mirror after the World Cup, no matter what happens in the challenging decisions and all those little things, you're able to say, well, I gave it my all. I did my best. I reacted in the moment because of the work I did to get there.
You're finishing my sentences. No, look, there's 2 layers to that. That's my secondary goal. And to your point, you can't be all things to all people. You can't keep everyone happy, and there's going to always be those individuals out there that will bring a negative spin. I completely accept that, but I do feel that I have a sense of responsibility to ensure performance so that I make it easier for others to come through. But that's my secondary response, role or goal. My primary goal is to ensure that up to this point, it's been layers and layers of platform. Creating layers in that platform that's been there already, learning from situations, seeing something that I could have done better, but understanding through reflection how I could have done better in order to increase growth, so that if it happens again, it minimizes it from happening, which is really important. So I have a good platform there now, and I'd want to going into a World Cup. But from here on, it's really digging deeper and ensuring that I don't don't leave any stones unturned, so that something will happen. It's life. Something will happen this World Cup, whether I'm involved or another match official is involved. You see traditionally in other World Cups, like
Yeah.
game changers,
There's
and
a
they can have
moment.
them.
Yeah.
There's a moment, and it can really reflect badly in a match official. And some, you can be lucky and you can be unlucky, whether it's you or not you. But once I can go away off the back of this tournament, because some like things will happen, but knowing that I've covered off everything I needed to up to this point, well, then I can come away with no regrets,
Yeah.
regardless of the things that we can't control. And I suppose that's the biggest thing for me.
As a referee on the pitch is one skill, right? And there's a lot of elements to it, and there's a lot of moving parts. But as a TMO, a television match official, that's a whole different skill, right? And it's a whole different way of communicating, as you said, and you've got all these different gadgets at the touch of your finger, right? Can you maybe just explain what goes on behind those scenes? Because we hear you, we don't necessarily always see you, right?
Yeah, it's that's a loaded question, and at the detriment of boring people, I'll try to simplify it as best.
Okay.
So from a team perspective, you know, the relationship with the referee and the understanding needs to be clear. What does the referee want versus what the referee doesn't want? So you have protocol, you stick to the protocol. Like, you have a clear knock on, it comes 3 phases after a try. Our hands are tied, and then we get like crucified. And how did they miss that? How did he or she miss that? But it's not that we missed it. It's just that's protocol. We have to stick with protocol. You're allowed to come in 2 phases before a try is scored. So aside from the relationship you have with the referee and what they want, live calls or what they want to be reviewed, which generally should be on the same page, but it's the little things that really aids them individually. That's one area. So you need to be able to study that and understand what the individual wants. The second part then is identifying what the game needs. Like, to be very honest with you, TMOs could come in 10 times for head and head collisions or shoulder to head collisions. Like, they happen, a lot in games. And we need to ensure that the game has flow. So again, it's the battle of what does the game need versus what does not need. And TMO is by far, is the hardest role. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Why did she come in there? Why didn't she come in there? And something, a message that could have come down the line one week could be the opposite of the same situation the week after, depending on situation, circumstances. And that's the grey of rugby.
Yeah.
I've grown to like the role an awful lot more. I'd want to, considering the opportunity now that I have. But at the start, I struggled with that because, from a referee and an assistant referee perspective, which is a lot more interactive on pitch and on field, and with the players and that. And then the third layer would be dealing with the broadcast, the director, having an EVS operator, being able to identify those angles, but not too much. Being able to remember to stick to the clear and obvious. Does a jump out? Does the game need it? And then when you do come in, the skill of, getting in early doors, speaking to the director. Okay, this is what we're going to review. Are you ready? It's on number or whatever, and having that precision, that communication, accuracy, and then to the referee. Okay, this is what we're going to show you, and then ensuring the right angles, and then sometimes having challenges such as working with directors who won't show you the angles that you want if it's against the home teams.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which can happen in certain countries. Now, it rarely happens, but it does happen. So in that case, again, I've learned through experience that there's means and ways of dealing with that. So now got the button to the referee. So Andy, this is what, okay, I'm going to show you the next angle. Okay, so-and-so, can you show me this angle? So-and-so, I'm asking for this angle, waiting for this angle, Andy. So-and-so, ignoring over the comms. So everyone can hear this. Okay, so-and-so, I'm asking you for this angle. So I'm pressing the button so everyone can hear, they know that. And then their hands are tied and they have to show me the angle. And that's, I've learned through the hard, through hard moments of not doing that. And you live and learn. And
this is the thing, though, as a fan, you don't see that or hear that typically, right? Because all you hear is that little interaction between you and the referee. So you don't hear all the chatter that's going on behind the scenes in order for you to pull up the right angles, the right message, so you can give the clear picture.
Yeah.
That's
And you
that's
see, part of being, and sorry for interrupting, part of
no,
being judged on performance is the promptness of the reviewing,
right.
which can reflect badly on you as a team. This review could go on for ages when it could have been done in a quarter of the time
Yeah.
if the angles were provided sooner, or the communication from the TMO to the director could have been better. Sometimes there's a misalignment. Maybe sometimes you have two instances of foul play, and the director thinks you're looking at. So you have to be really precise in what you're asking for in order to avoid any confusion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a lot.
Jesus, yeah. There is a lot in it, and I'm sure that's probably another podcast in itself, right? But let's just look on, and there's something that you said earlier on, which has kind of stood out to me, and I've heard you say it before. Um, when you're so committed to a sport, your family and friends are there for your moments, but you're not necessarily there for theirs, right? And you touched on it a little bit. So, with your continued kind of success as a ref, mother, a wife, sister, daughter, and all the above, and friend, have you managed to find a balance and enjoy the moments that you particularly would have missed as a player? Are you able to make that balance or have that balance now?
Um, I'm definitely more mature. I'm able to identify what's important, and when I'm present, I'm present now. We talk about being present. I travel every weekend. Um, like we'll have them a couple of weeks off in June, and then 3 weeks in South Africa, home for a week. Men's 20s World Cup, and all the teams who are involved in the World Cup will do that, and then TRC back to South Africa for 10 days and back home, and then a couple of weekends, and then we fly to the Men's World Cup. So we travel a lot. But what I will say is I've identified is what needs as much attention as possible. And that's my family. It's Simone and my wife, Alfie, and my family. My friends definitely are at the bottom of the list, and I mean that in a respectful way. And I've already spoken with them, and I know I'm not around. When it's time to hang up the boots, I'll make sure I make it up to them. But you can't be all things to all people, and I don't have enough energy or enough of me. Not that they're looking for me too much. I don't mean it in a boastful way, but it's just in a truthful manner. Like, so I've had to prioritize what's most important. And Simone is the most important thing. I went to New Zealand in October, November for 2 months for the Women's World Cup. She didn't come over with Alfie because it didn't make sense. A 1 year old, for her to
Mm.
travel 36 hours and then to take her away from the support structures that she has in the Nevilles and the Couples. So there was no point in that, which meant she had to suffer at home for the 2 months, picking up the slack with Alfie, and I had to suffer emotionally away. So but she takes priority. So I think it's important to have a carrot, to plan ahead, watch something to look forward to, constantly to have something to look forward to. I think that helps. And then again, being present when you're at home, being actually present.
I think it's also important to note the support is there for you to achieve your best and to do your best to become your best in the role that you're in, right? I think a lot of people see the people who are super successful, but they never really see the people behind that success. And I don't think any individual is successful without the power of a collective or a support group behind them. Which I think is admirable to Simona, and to be able to not potentially give you the grief that other couples may go through because they're away, right? So knowing that this isn't forever, but this is inevitable, and how can I be the best I can be for you, or how I think knowing that you have that in the background, it removes any unnecessary stress, so you can focus on the things that require stress, or you know what I mean?
100%. Like, she's been my rock. Like, we're together over 10 years, and um, she's my person. Like, people go on about soulmates and it sounds cringy, but she is my soulmate. And um, you know, she's the person with the real head of knowledge and wisdom when I'd probably about to say or do something silly, and I'd always bounce things off her. But she's always been the one person, and obviously apart from my family, to always had belief in anything that I've always anything I've ever put my mind to. And one story, like I wouldn't be here for her, 100%, Steve, and I wouldn't. And as hard as it is and difficult it is for her, and how lonely it must be for her, and weekends, never been there weekends. Weekends is family time. So now our family time is the evenings. You know, we make sure we put Alfie to bed at 7, half 7. That's a couple of hours. That's our time together. That's important. It's valid, really, like invaluable time. But I remember when I first started out reffing, I really disliked it. Like, I hate's a very strong word, but it wasn't too far off that. And people kept saying, and I was saying, oh, I don't know if I keep going doing it. Like, and a few people came up to Simona and said, you have to make sure she stays at it. And so she did. She goes, Jodie, like, you have to stay at it. People keep approaching me. There's obviously something there. Just give another 3 months, even though that meant taking me away from her even in her earlier years. And I knew then, I said, right, and I promised her, and I said, well, if I'm going to do it, something needs to change, right? Like, there's no point continuing with something without having the capability of reflecting to why I wasn't enjoying it. Like, there was something, and I always say, like, if you're not enjoying something, it could be a small tweak or it could be a big tweak, and like most of the time it'll work, and if it doesn't work, do something else. And I penny dropped. I realized in all the games that I'd started refereeing in, you know, break it back. I realized that I'd 70 caps for my country, and I'd been refereed by 70 international referees. And I went into my first game expecting to be just as good as those international referees who had 10, 20 years of experience on their shoulders, with a completely unrealistic goal and vision and view, which meant I was coming off the pitch really annoyed, upset, that I let the players down and the next player, I let myself down with all the mistakes. But in any environment, whether you're experienced in that environment or lack experience in that environment, you're going to make mistakes. And it's about the ability of learning off the back of that, the why, and understanding in order to minimize them from happening further. And from that moment on, I went into the next game having that mindset, allowing myself to have those mistakes and understanding that, okay, the more mistakes you have, the more learnings. Just whack them out, understand the why. If they happen again, you know exactly what you're going to do because you've reflected, you've analyzed and reflected on that. And that's growth. That's growth in any environment. And, you know, as a consequence, enjoyment came. And I literally wouldn't be sat here if she didn't push me to push myself in giving that extra 3 months and understanding, you know, what needed to change in order for it to change and for the enjoyment to kick in and for me to improve.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, fair play to her. And it's do you know what, it's beautiful to hear that you have that support structure in place and you have that level of encouragement behind the scenes, because we do need a push sometimes when we are unsure. We do need a push to go, just get out there, just go for it, give it another lash and see what can happen. And if you definitely don't like it, then no problem, at least you gave it your best shot, right? So yeah,
Sure.
fair play to her, because those little moments have a huge knock-on effect. If you look like the butterfly effect, and 10 years later or whatever, you look where you are now, right?
Massive.
So
Massive.
so important. I think anybody who is in that position now, who's wondering what they should do, if they should continue something, look at what little adjustments you can make and then give it another lash. And then if it doesn't work, fine. But if it does work, you could be opening yourself up to an unbelievable world and experience in the future.
100%.
Looking back, okay, to 11 or 12-year-old Joy, right? As she embarks on her life, right? What piece of advice would you give her that maybe you wished you had when you were her age?
I look at the 11 and 12-year-old Joy smiling at you because you knew the 11 and 12-year-old Joy, who everyone probably thought was gay all along, and she didn't realize that she was 24, even though she did, but subconsciously she suppressed it. So that's why I was smiling there. I laughed. My mum always, like I always say, like, I'm one of five. You know, my mum and dad kept going until they had the baby girl. It's the fifth child, and she so happened to have a fifth child as a gay woman who, or you know, as a tomboy who marries a woman. I think is hilarious. But I would say have self-belief and know that you can achieve whatever you put your mind to. Just have that self-belief, and have the confidence to take on whatever challenges that you want to take on. And the second piece of advice would be or the three actually, if you don't mind. Don't fear mistakes. It's in life. Like, we're all going to make mistakes. Be kinder to yourself, and understand that the key is to learn from those mistakes. You know, we're human, and just learn and move on. If you keep making the same mistake again and again and again, well then fear the mistakes and have a good long hard
we have a problem.
have a long hard look at yourself. And lastly, have no regrets. Like, and you can control that. I mean, you put enough work and preparation in place, 9 times out of 10 you come away with no regrets.
Leads me
They're the
on
things
to,
they're the things that you can control, I think.
yeah. So if you're talking to yourself, have no regrets. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and have a bit of self-belief in you, because you're going down the right path. But if you, let's look at this then. What has been the greatest challenge in your life, and how did you take it on?
Easy. Easy. Um, um, I really struggled with my sexuality. I remember having a conversation with my mum when I was 12, and I couldn't take my eyes off a pair of legs, female legs. And I remember thinking, this isn't right. And I remember sitting down with her and I said it to her, and she said, that's natural, Jodie. You're just, you're just experiencing, you're young and you're experiencing life. You're just,
Curious and
being
whatever.
curious, whatever. And I knew there was something more to it. And I did really well in suppressing my feelings. And I think back now, and I've lost so many years, because I came out when I was 24, and I lost so many years of exploring and having fun with the same sex as me, and relationships and that. But it took me a lot of time to be able to deal with my sexuality, and to come clean with all my family. And what I was doing was, I was making up, I started dating someone, and I started making up excuses to why I wasn't in Limerick. And like, I'd be a very truthful person. I don't like lying, and I'd end up having to lie, and then I get caught out, and I just build up of anxiety and overwhelmingness. And then Dave was the first person I told. And Dave and I were like really tight growing up, and still are. And he was brilliant. And the more people I told, they were brilliant. Like, Dad was one of the last people I told, and he was probably the best. And we had all, because he was a strong father figure, and he was the best. Like, um, um, but I think the hardest part, to answer your question, would have been understanding who I was. You know, um, who I was as a person. Was I bisexual, or was I a lesbian? And the moment I realized who I was, which takes time, was the moment I had complete um, an air of being comfortable with myself, being comfortable in my own skin. And the moment you're comfortable in your own skin and able to talk openly about that, the moment people can be comfortable in your company. And I found that, a couple of my brothers turned around and said, we just want old Jodie back. That I was so tight and tense about what people had thought about me, because I didn't know who I was and what I thought about myself. The moment I was comfortable in my own skin was the moment that everything changed. And they were like, we have Jodie back.
Yeah.
And it was very relieving to hear that. And it was probably kind of shocking in a way, because I didn't see it that way. I didn't understand it, because I didn't reflect in that manner. I didn't understand that's how I was being perceived. But I learned a lot from that. Like, you learn the most from the hardest moments in life, I think.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like, so you said that at 24 was when you started kind of telling people, but you had that first conversation at 12. So that's 12 years. Not only are you having that conversation, but you're going through life changing as a teenager. You're experiencing things. How was you said you were really good at, like, repressing things and holding things back. Like, it's funny that you say that I was really good at this, because ultimately being good at that helped drive that anxiety and drive that, I suppose, lack of confidence in being able to open up. What would you have done differently?
If I were to go back on it, what would I do differently?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like knowing after 12 years of trying to figure yourself out, right, in terms of understanding yourself, and then knowing that when you opened up, it was nearly like a weight, like you were free, like you could soar. What would you have done differently? Or
I
would you have
don't
done
know.
anything differently?
Such a hard question.
Yeah.
Talking about, you're talking, I'm telling my age now. You're talking 16 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ireland was a different place 16 years ago.
It was, yeah. Yeah.
So
The
I don't
world was
know.
so different as well. Like it was such a, it was a little bit more traditional than where we are now after being the first country to vote in same-sex marriage and all that, you know. But there's still underlying elements of old Ireland floating around.
I've shared the story with you in a minute before we finish, but I'll come back to it. But I really don't know, Steve. I think it's something that people tend to go through. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's easier for young people these days. I certainly just didn't feel comfortable with sharing that, and I think the mind is a very powerful thing. Like I did very well in suppressing,
Mm.
you know, and convincing myself like that I wasn't like, you know, I had many boyfriends and just my mind like, and it's funny like I think it's important that at any stage of someone's life, I think there's a stigma attached to a counselor and to talking to someone. I think I spoke to someone and it was the best thing I ever did, and I'd
Great.
do it again if I needed to do it again.
Yeah.
No stigma attached to that, and I think that the more that we, you know, the more that we see it that way, the better. You know, as we said, life can be difficult like for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. That's a tough question.
Mm.
Like,
I think the fact that you spoke to somebody though, like you obviously reaching out to your mom was amazing, but then to speak to a counselor to get a professional opinion to kind of help you with your thoughts and try and untangle what was going on in your mind, because I would worry quite a lot. I have a tendency to go down green paths in my brain, and all of a sudden then I've like catastrophized loads of things, right? So
mm,
I really have to
yeah,
be focused and present. And if I find myself going down that world, I have to breathe. I have to focus on my breathing or do something on that regard. But to have somebody with a professional ability to help unravel what we're trying to figure out is an unbelievable strength. And it goes back to asking for help. Asking for help is so important, no matter what age you are.
100%. And the funny thing is, to your point, and you've nailed it on, like nailed on, hit the nail on the head. Um, you know, the counselor, she unraveled something in me, and like subconsciously, I like that I didn't realize that what that not telling dad, and dad was the second last person. I think I said he was last, but he's not. And that's the story I'm going to tell you is the last person. Dad was the second last person, and I'd built it up so much that I was suppressing it. And then when I went to counselor, I just erupted like, you know, this is something that really is bothering me, you know, living in living these lies and living at home with dad and living this lie. And immediately I left, and it can be quite energy draining going speaking to someone, but it's you know, it's in the same sentence, it's a great experience. And I went straight home and told dad, and he didn't he probably reacted the very best. Like that's the
Yeah.
irony of it all. Like but my nana was the last person.
Okay, go on.
My nana was the last person. She was 95, and we all feared Nana. Like she's nearly like 100 years
Been through it
of
all.
living in this world. And my mum kept saying to me, this is a month out before I got married, and at this stage I was very comfortable. I didn't care that Nana didn't know, because I knew that Nana wouldn't understand, and it didn't bother me, you know. Those, you know, that dad knew, and being the last, and everyone else knew that was, and they, you know, I was comfortable in my own skin, and life was good, and people had a problem with it. That's their prerogative, and I just
Mm.
disengage, like we spoke about earlier. And mum goes, I said, okay, mum, I'll tell her. Will you come with me? Will you come with me, please? And she goes, Jodie, I'll drop you at the door. And I go down. So this was in Mesquite, and I go down then to Auntie Bridgie. And I was like, thanks, mum, that's great. So you're going to drop me at the door and let me, like, you know, let me into that fire, like, you know. And so I went in anyway, and I said, Nan, I have something to tell you. I'm getting married next month to a woman. That's a disgrace. Now, as I said it to her, she was deaf as a doornail, so I pretty much screamed it. And I said, okay, Nana. And we finished having, where are you getting married? She wasn't asking many questions. I said, Grace. And I wasn't bothered by it because I expected it. Like, and
Yeah.
I don't blame her, like, everything that she's gone through. And this story really represents the power of society, and we talk about like not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And this really represents this story. And so Nana used to go in respite. So mum, around mum, 10 minutes later, come and collect me. How did that go? I'll tell you in your eyes. 2 weeks later, Nana goes to respite, and mum's walking down the hallway 2 weeks before I get married, and walking down the landing and into the communal area where all the service users sit in the big lounge, the TV in the background, RT News announcing that the referendum has passed. And from walking in the front door, all she could hear was Nana, because like she's screaming because she's deaf as door now. My granddaughter is getting married in 2 weeks, like proudly announcing it, because RT News has shared that the referendum has passed and now it's okay. Society's accepted it and she's accepted it. And that's the power of society.
That's fascinating. But like,
my mother rings me in hysterics going, you'd never believe. Well, we laughed.
But but she had the pride that she had for you because she was there telling the world as well, right? So it's it is sad how strong society has an influence on so many people in so many difficult and challenging ways. But that's a positive one in terms of your Nana got to express how proud she was of you before before the end, which is class.
It was bittersweet.
Bittersweet, yeah, bittersweet. I know you didn't care, but like, there you go. Now, Nana. Well, if RT say it, then it must be
I
good.
disgrace now, Nana?
Look at me now. Well,
funny.
Listen, Joy, come here. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I loved chatting to you. I loved the insights that you gave, especially the fact to, if you aren't proud or happy with the way you react to something, just take time out to reflect, because the next time when you come down with that challenge, you'll react in a way that you would be happier with. And I think the point of self-belief, I think whether you're 11 or 12-year-old person or you're nearly a 40-year-old person like myself, I think it's important that there is you do kind of focus on believing in yourself, because while others mightn't, if you believe in yourself, then anything could happen. So listen, Joy, the stage is yours. Let people know what's next, what's happening. If people wanted to learn more about being a ref or to understand more about your story, can they reach you? Where should they go? Tell the world.
So, do you know what? In general, I'd like to say, like, people just give sport a go. The benefits of sport, physically, mentally, just do it. If you have any reservations and anxieties, just do it. Refereeing, the best thing I ever did. Got to see the world, made so many great connections. I thought the rugby family ended literally as a player, but it's even a bigger family in the life of the match officials. Yeah, that's it. I'm not going to plug myself here, so I'm not going to do it. But what I will say to you, Steve, is you were born to do this. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. Like, I think the level of reflection and life experience and messagings that you have, like, I've really enjoyed this. So well done on everything that you've achieved. And it's always been a pleasure. Good friend, from a very early age, and no doubt will stay that way till long before we're 40 in 10 years' time.
When we're 95, screaming the houses down.
With a pint in her hand, of course.
Yeah, without a doubt. Come here, listen, thanks so much. And I wish you all the best at the World Cup. I wish you and your wonderful family continued growth and success. And I look forward to keeping an eye on you and staying in touch over the next while. Fair play to you.
Thanks, Steve. Mind yourself.
Once again, thank you for joining me on season 4 and taking part in this journey where we talk to people like you and me about what motivates them, what inspires them, and ultimately what makes them tick. I've learned so much from the various conversations I've had, and I hope you can take something from this that you can apply to your life. That's why this podcast has been created. I'm very proud of it, and I'm very thankful for everybody who's joined me so far. Thank you all for listening.